This is the Jeff McLeod Show, where we talk about God, America, the things that make our country great, and so much more. Today I'm going to be talking about a pretty exclusive subject, so if you're in New Jersey, you're probably going to like it. If you're outside of New Jersey, you might want to ignore this podcast episode because it might not be for you. But today I'm going to be discussing the campaign right now between Mikie Sherrill and Republican candidate Jack Ciattarelli. So right now, the incumbent governor in New Jersey is Phil Murphy. He has served 2 terms. His terms are about to be up. So there's an election this November to determine who the next governor of our state will be. I am a conservative Republican, and I want to start with this. I believe that Mikie Sherrill is a very bad candidate. We cannot let her become the next governor of New Jersey. We faced enough problems with Phil Murphy. We have high taxes. Our groceries have more probably than doubled. Gas prices have gone up. During COVID, we were shut down and liquor stores were allowed to remain open while churches were forced to be shut. So he's just been a very bad governor. He declared emergency powers and he sneaked in a lot of different policies while the rest of the world was sleeping because of COVID. And because of Phil Murphy, our state is in a lot worse condition than it was 8 years ago under Governor Chris Christie. So let's begin. I looked at the debate and I watched it and I thought clearly Jack Ciattarelli won. I believe that his policies were more substantive. All that Mikie Sherrill could really do is she could call Jack Ciattarelli a Trump supporter or talk about how he was for Charlie Kirk and how Charlie Kirk was a Christian nationalist. And basically she had no real policy to debate Jack Ciattarelli with. She just used people that certain Democrats hate and basically linked Jack Ciattarelli with those individuals. So she didn't really have any substantial policy or substantive policy that she presented. It was all just ad hominem attacks and trying to make Jack Ciattarelli guilty by association. So I thought the debate went miserably for her, and you can see this in some of the latest polls. There was an internal poll conducted by the Sherrill campaign today that only had her up 7%. There was a poll that was conducted by Fox News that only had her up 8%. There was a poll a few days ago that had Jack Ciattarelli up 1%. Granted, that was one of Jack Ciattarelli's internal polls. There was another poll that was neutral that had a dead heat, that had a tie in the state of New Jersey, and it's for a number of reasons. There's been a scandal that was leaked. Basically, Mikie Sherrill was involved in a cheating scandal at the Naval Academy. However, that should have never been released. It was released by somebody in the government. We don't know who yet, whether it's the Ciattarelli campaign or whether it's someone in the Trump administration. They released it, and it's making her not look good. And it was private documents that should not have been released. So she's saying she's going to sue. So if it's found out that Jack Ciattarelli's campaign uncovered this all, it might look bad on both candidates, not just her. Secondly, there was another big deal where people are accusing her of nepotism. She basically sponsored. She had a picture with 2 people that were going into the Naval Academy, and she acted like it was people from her district, when in reality it was 2 of her children. So people are accusing her of nepotism right now and favoring her family because it's very difficult to be able to get into the Naval Academy. Only 9% of people are accepted, and normally they have to be sponsored by somebody in government, whether it's a senator or a House member. So she's looking bad for a variety of different reasons. This is the same candidate that was up in some polls by about 12 to 15% a couple months ago. So her lead is dwindling. Some people are comparing this to the year that Governor Youngkin won in Virginia over the issue with the school boards. You're seeing basically Mikie Sherrill's lead shrink and Jack Ciattarelli's grow. And Mikie Sherrill's not performing as well as Governor Phil Murphy was with African Americans and Latinos. So you never know. But I think it's for good reason, and we're going to talk about some of Mikie Sherrill's policy positions. So she was asked about taxes a variety of times, and she said, in quote, that she would not commit to not raising it, though later her campaign said it's off the table. So if she would not commit to not raising it, and then the campaign later on rolled this back, it means that the campaign realized that this is not a winnable strategy. Telling people their taxes might increase is not a winnable strategy for any candidate. She also has critique Republicans for tax cuts, saying that tax cuts benefit the upper 1% in our government. Well, you want to raise taxes. Specifically, you might want to raise sales tax. Who does that hurt? That hurts everybody. It doesn't just hurt the rich people in New Jersey, it hurts the poor people. And New Jersey is one of the top 5 states that people are fleeing. And it's because of the high property taxes. It's because of the exorbitant prices of housing. And it's because people can't even find housing. New Jersey has become very unaffordable. And as a New Jersey resident, something has to change. My call for Democratic voters right now who are on the fence, or independents that are on the fence, what more do you have to see? You've had 8 years of a Democrat, and he has done absolutely nothing to lower cost. In fact, he became a bit of a dictator over the COVID-19 pandemic. If you didn't like being forced to wear masks, if you didn't like being forced not to go to church, or you didn't like being forced not to work, then you should really consider whether you want to vote for Mikie Sherrill. Furthermore, if you are for a person being able to have school choice, so some people are, some aren't, but if you're for school choice, and I believe it's taxpayer money, so we should be able to decide what school we get to fund. If you're for school choice, Mikie Sherrill might say, oh, like she did in the debate, I'm for charter schools. Then how come Phil Murphy said he was for charter schools and only started one, and it was right around his second election, okay, him being reelected? It's all to get elected. That's it. And she didn't indicate any policy that she wanted to change to fund these private charter schools. So in reality, Mikie Sherrill is for public school education, which, if I understand, it's free, but and additionally, she wants to indoctrinate. There was a Parents' Rights Act, Bill of Rights Act of 2023 that that some of the Republicans in the House wanted to pass. This bill would have given parents autonomy over their own children instead of the government. It would have allowed parents to see what was actually being taught in their children's education, and they would have been able to vote to change it if they didn't like it. Furthermore, they would have been able to have meetings with teachers if they disliked some of what was being taught. And additionally, any school representative who, before they changed a gender marker or a pronoun or anything about a minor child, had to notify the parents. So I don't see what's not to like. Mikie Sherrill voted against this bill. It just shows you that Democrats want our school and our educational system to be more of an indoctrination system than a system of education. There are other states where this is not the case. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis has removed many gender ideology books. So they might be saying, the people on the left, they're censoring content. Do we want first and second graders to see explicit sexual books at a young age? Do we really want to do that? Is that up to the state, or should that be up to parents? And I believe that should be up to parents. Children from a young age should not be able to see or even know much about sex. They're way too young for that. And that's not the job of the state. That's the job of the parents. And I'm not going to classify Democrats and call them Nazi or socialist, but I will say this is a playbook right out of a communist. I'm not saying they are communists, but the communists did this. What they would do is they would indoctrinate children in school. They would basically raise them to serve the government instead of their parents. So they would create this wedge between the parents and the children. And many children, what they would do is, if their parents were insubordinate to the state, they would report their parents and their parents would be taken, and the state would have custody of the children. Nazi Germany did this. And do we really want the state educating our children? It is a parent's job strictly to be able to educate in certain matters. The school is just for reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's not for gender ideology sessions. It's not for, oh, you can be whoever you want to be. If you want to be a boy and you're a girl, you can be a boy. If you're a girl and you want to be a boy, you can be a boy. You can be whatever you want to be. In fact, you can even be a cat if you want to be a cat, and we'll provide your own litter box for you. It's utterly ridiculous. We do not want the state educating our children. We need to make sure that parents have the autonomy over their children's education, because the parents are putting the taxpayer money in. The parents and the taxpayers, we're paying for the governor, we're paying for the school district members through our property taxes. So we have to make sure that we have a say in our children's educational system. It should not be the job of the state, and it should not be the job of a school board. It should be the people that are paying into these places to allow public schools to receive money. And if they're not doing their job, if public schools want to be indoctrination centers, then parents should have every right to be able to pull their children and be able to put them in a private school, whether it's a private charter school, whether it's a private Christian school, whether it's a private Catholic school, whether it's a Jewish school for those that are in North Jersey and the Toms River area and Jackson area. Parents should have the right to be able to decide so on their children's education. And the reason that Democrats are not for school choice is because what they want is they want to indoctrinate, and they don't want parents to have any other option because they know how expensive private school is. However, in New Jersey, on average, we give about $15,000 per student in the public school system. If only, let's say, $8,000 was given toward private school, that would greatly boost parents, and it would still give public school some money, but it would also boost parents and allow them to have a say in their child's education, and it would make private school affordable. So I'm all for school vouchers. That would be, Mikie Sherrill would be against that because she wants our children to be indoctrinated in public schools where there are many good, meaningful teachers, but at the same time, there are a lot of times there's people on these school boards that have sinister beliefs, and they want just children to buy into their political ideology, and that's unacceptable. That is a parent's job. It's not a college's job, and it's not a school's job. A school should be non-biased. They should teach the greatness of America, American history. That's it. End of story. In addition to English and math and reading. So she voted, as I said already, to raise taxes in New Jersey. At least she's honest. I wouldn't be campaigning on that, even if I did think we should raise taxes. And I don't, by the way, but I would not be campaigning on that. That is not a winnable strategy. I did not find a fully detailed tax reform plan from Sherrill that enumerates new tax rates, brackets, or comprehensive changes to income tax, corporate tax, capital gains tax, etc. But she has said she's not opposed to raising tax. So that means she could raise tax on any of these type of taxes. Do you really want that, everybody? If you're a New Jersey voter, do you want higher taxes? Additionally, do you want higher taxes and stricter green laws and all these carbon emission laws where our country by and large obeys them pretty well and we have low emission rates? Do we really want to spend more for eco-friendly cars? I don't think so. I don't want to be spending $10,000 to $15,000 on a new electric car battery. Not for me. And that's not also mentioning the fact that electric cars tear up the roadways. So that's more money that has to go out. So there's one thing, I can be honest, there's one thing that I do like, and she said that we need to open some sort of portal in New Jersey that shows exactly where taxpayer money is going to. Okay, I would agree with that. We need more transparency in our government. So, and I can agree with that. Going back to the school issue, she said that we need to teach learning by phonics in public school. I agree with that. So those are two areas where I would say I agree. However, virtually everything else, I pretty much oppose. There might be small things that I agree with, but it's not enough to overcome these giant disagreements I have. So Mikie Sherrill also voted for the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, which was under President Joe Biden. So this allowed for a 15% corporate minimum tax and major IRS enforcement funding. And you want to know what? These Democrats all said, oh, we need, I think it was something like 86,000 new agents, if I remember correctly. Might have been 76,000, but I know it was over 75,000 new agents. So we need them to be able to oversee all the taxes to make sure there are no corporate loopholes and that the rich aren't exploiting the system. 1 + 1 = 2. So you might say, oh, we're assigning more IRS agents for the rich people in the upper 1%. You're still assigning more for those of us who make less. So in reality, you're giving more, you're just paying, you're expanding government bureaucracy, and what you're doing is you're making the government look into more people that don't have money and look into their tax records. Unacceptable. And I know originally they wanted anything that was over $600 to be reported to the federal government. That's most people's paychecks. Completely unacceptable. They want control of our bank accounts to know how much we're making. and they want to have complete control over everything. Bad bill, okay? The American Rescue Plan, she voted yes for, which was a COVID relief law in March of 2021 with expanded child tax credit. I don't want to also just lambast the Democrats. Many Republicans were for this bill as well. They were for it when Donald Trump was the president. There was a similar bill that handed out money to people that were, to basically all eligible Americans, which was pretty much everybody that was over the age of 18. I'm completely against that. So I'm completely against any form of welfare state. So the government giving us money, I think, is an inherently bad thing. So I'm against this. This puts our government in even more debt. So we're going to be paying this back for generations. My generation, other people that are part of Gen Z or millennials or later on Gen Alpha, Gen X, we're all going to be paying for this for a long time. So I'm against that bill. Bad vote. I would have voted no for it, although I know a lot of Republicans voted for it too. Now we're going to get into a really serious issue. This, for me as a voter, is my number one issue. And I tend to believe in voting for social causes. The social causes matter the most to me. I am 100% pro-life, and I'll give you my reason why. Viability is a very bad argument for abortion. Where exactly does an individual child become viable? Is it at six weeks in the womb, 6 months, 9 months, a year outside the womb, 2 years? Are elderly people viable because they're unable to take care of themselves and they're having a decline in cognitive state? So, well, I firmly believe in being pro-life because we have a standard. Our standard is conception. And if your standard is conception, it doesn't vary or change. No one has a conclusive guideline about for the people that are pro-choice about at what point abortion should be illegal. I've heard people say that people should be able to abort newborn children. I've heard that before from people. Granted, they're fringe. I've also heard people say that it should be 20 weeks, which I think it should be way sooner than that. Like as I said, I believe it starts at conception. But then there's people that believe it should be only in cases of rape and incest, which to me is more understandable. I disagree with it, but it's more understandable. So what exactly is the guideline, right? And the rape and incest cases, I want to bring this up. Democrats will always say, you're not for women, you're against women. What about people that were, what about women that were raped or there was incest or maybe the life of the mother was in jeopardy? Do you know that composes less than 0.1% of all abortion cases? Less than 0.1. The 99.9, whatever number comes after that, is abortion that could be prevented. So I am for, obviously, no abortion, right? And I believe it was a sad day in our country when abortion became legalized. And this is a take that I stand by. Abortion is the modern day child sacrifice. So for hundreds and thousands of years, people performed child sacrifice to false idols. And we would all say that was brutal, that was satanic, and that was murder. The Aztecs murdered over 200,000 children by estimates today every single year. And we would say that's disgusting, that's cruel, that's wicked. But in America, we are aborting millions of children every single year. Are we any better just because our children are murdered inside the womb? I don't think so. And many Democrats, as we're going to talk about with Mikie Sherrill, voted against a bill that would basically ban abortions. If an abortion failed and a child was born, basically there was a bill that was presented that would basically arrest the doctors who didn't help save the child once it was born, once the abortion failed. And the doctors would be arrested if they didn't help save the child. Who would be against such a thing? The baby is literally born outside of the womb, and you don't believe the doctor should be charged if he just leaves it there to die? There was a Born Alive bill from 2003 which stipulated that a baby had to be saved if it was born alive, but there were no penalties on doctors. Mikie Sherrill voted against the bill in 2023 that would penalize doctors for just leaving a baby there and penalizing the doctor. She voted against that. How evil. I have to just say that. In no scenario should any baby, let alone a baby that's born alive, that's 9 months, where you see its entire body, you can't argue that its brain isn't developed. You can't argue that doesn't have a heartbeat, it doesn't have brain waves, that it doesn't experience pain. Yet you're for a doctor who just leaves a full-born baby there and doesn't save it. How disgusting. That's all I have to say. How disgusting. And if you're willing to vote for a candidate like that, I don't know what else to say. It's utter moral depravity. So if we think that we're better than people thousands of years ago who committed child sacrifice, we're no better, because they could also give the same argument that many people on the left give, that those babies were not viable and that they weren't able to care for themselves. And if you believe in that, you can justify euthanasia because old people aren't able to take care of themselves, the old people that are in nursing homes. You can justify assisted suicide. You can justify aborting and killing off, having a mass genocide of individuals who have Down syndrome or have other types of special needs or who have handicaps. It's completely unacceptable. And Mikie Sherrill voted for a bill that would not penalize doctors for not saving a child when it's a newborn child that an abortion failed. How sick and utterly disgusting. So here's some other things she voted for. She improved Contraception Access for Service Members Act. This would ensure active duty military members can access a year's supply of contraception regardless of where they are stationed. I want to say this, okay? She very much was an advocate and proponent of women in the military being able to have abortions. It's very simple. If you don't want to have an abortion, don't have relationships with people outside of marriage. Very, 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 very simple. And that's why I believe the Christian belief is the best. People should be accountable for their actions. If you're living recklessly and you're sleeping with a bunch of people, then you could have a baby. That is not the baby's fault. That's your fault. And there are ways of preventing that. And the number one way is not having a physical relationship outside of marriage. And there are other ways beyond that, which I would disagree with. There are other ways beyond that. And you didn't do anything. So you were utterly immature. You didn't think about the consequences to your actions. And you're going to penalize that baby for your actions because you chose to be irresponsible. That's unacceptable. And we have to change that mindset in our country. So I don't want to hear the women say, my body, my choice, when in reality, that is a separate body. That's not their body. That's a separate body inside of them. It's not a leech. It's not a maggot. It's not some form of parasite. It's something that is a higher being that has DNA the moment it was conceived. And for somebody like Mikie Sherrill to vote no, basically it shows that she supports a baby just sitting there and dying and a doctor not being penalized for letting that happen. It's like me seeing a murder happen, and it's like me being part of a murder, right? And maybe I'm part of a getaway driver, and it's like me not being charged for being the getaway driver in a crime. That's utterly ridiculous. I aided it, so therefore I should be charged. And the same thing is true. We're not even saying the doctor should be charged for the other abortions that the doctor is performing. We're just saying the doctor should be charged because he let a live baby where the abortion failed not live and just let it die and sit there. Okay, it's the same concept as the Chinese just sometimes leaving their babies they didn't want out and letting them die. No different. So I don't want to hear that there's any morality to that. There's zero morality to that. And she was an advocate of this in the military. She also, in Florida debate, she offered amendments to codify the military treatment facilities. Mikie Sherrill also desired to codify Roe v. Wade. She signed onto the bill, which would enshrine the right to abortion in federal law. While at the same time, I want to say this, she voted against 2 anti-abortion bills in January 2023 because she said that basically she said it's up to the states. That's utter hogwash. If you believe that Roe v. Wade should be codified, then you don't believe it's a state issue. You believe it's a national issue, and what you want to do is you want to push your agenda to legalize Roe v. Wade again across the entire country. And you spoke out of 2 sides of your mouth when you said, oh, the Republicans, what they want to do, this is a state issue. This is not a national issue to eliminate Roe v. Wade. So she's speaking out of two sides of her mouth, and it's completely unacceptable, and it's a logical fallacy. It's a double standard, and it's completely unacceptable. She has repeatedly criticized Republican efforts to impose nationwide bans and limit access or remove protections. She has no weak limit. Okay, I don't know what her weak limit is. She hasn't come out and said, I believe abortion should be illegal after 20 weeks. I've never heard that out of her mouth. I've never heard her say that basically near-term abortion should be illegal. I've never heard her say that. And that's because she's one of these radical leftists who is radical on abortion. And every single person that's for abortion, and this is a trigger for me, is somebody who was born. It's somebody that was born. I was born. So for me to say, my mom should have been able to abort me if she wanted to, that doesn't make any sense when she didn't. So we should be against abortion. It's not women's right. It's a woman deciding that they want to take a life inside their own. Unacceptable. So next, her views on transgenderism. She voted no to the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act in 2025. That was H.R. 28. So this is a bill that would have restricted transgender girls from participating in girls' sports. Later, in 2023, she voted no to a similar bill that would have protected women and girls in sports. So these people on the left that say, oh, we're for feminism, we're for female rights. You're defeating feminism by allowing transgender individuals, by biological men, to compete in women's sports. It's completely unfair. Have you seen Liam Thomas, right? The dude with the big shoulders that's competing in female sports. He's bigger than me. Like, I'm a 6'4" man, and he is bigger than me, wider shoulders. And anyone that looks on that and says that's fair is out of their mind, and they're just pushing an agenda. And it's clearly true here. So she's saying, oh, we want feminists to have rights. Jack Ciattarelli is trying to take away the rights of women. He's trying to build a Christian national society that's dependent on men. When in reality, you're putting men at the forefront of women's sports. Men are going to be the best female sports players. I hate to break it to you, but there was a biological man a few years ago that was Miss Nevada. So we have biological men winning beauty pageants. We have biological men competing in women's sports. And from a federal level now, that's being opposed. But I don't understand why anybody would be for that. Like Gavin Newsom even said in an interview with Charlie Kirk that he wouldn't denounce it because he's getting votes from these transgender individuals. But he said how it was unfair, but he won't publicly denounce it. Everybody knows, it's just common sense, it doesn't matter who you are, that there is an unfair advantage between biological men and women. We are built differently. We have a different bone structure. Women are known to tear their knee joints much more than men. Those joints are still developed, even in a transgender individual. When someone performs an autopsy in 300 years on a body and they saw no gravestone, they're not going to say, oh, this was a transgender individual who identified as a female. No, they're going to say that was a biological man. And gender is not a social construct, as someone like Mikie Sherrill wants to tell you. Okay, you have certain chromosomes, and those chromosomes don't change. And for all human history, this was widely accepted. And in our degeneracy in the West, and basically our just time to think and sit, what we've allowed is we've allowed these things that are clearly false to become to become acceptable. And it's not going to be acceptable. And I believe among most people, they don't believe it is acceptable. So stand up this year. Vote against Mikie Sherrill if you live in New Jersey. She wants to push higher taxes. She wants parents not to have autonomy over their children and have control over their children's education. She wants to indoctrinate them. She wants there to be gay history lessons. She said that in an interview before. And she believes that biological men should compete in female sports. And she also further believes in abortion. And she receives a 0 from pro-life foundations. She didn't vote for anything that was remotely pro-life. So if you believe in conservative causes, if you believe in the right to life, if you're anti-transgender, if you believe that our taxes should be lower, if you believe New Jersey is on the decline and you want real change, don't vote for Mikie Sherrill. Stay tuned for part 2.